Welcome back to Ordinary People. It's a wet and wintry night here in Portadown, and I'm joined, as always, by Paul and Neil. How's it going, guys?
All good here.
I'm well, thank you, Andrew.
And we're joined tonight by Stephen Blevins. Neil, do you want to introduce Stephen for us?
Yes, I can. It's a real joy for me to be able to introduce Stephen. Um, we still don't know each other all that well. I think by the end of our conversation, we'll know each other even better. But I do know that Stephen, most importantly, Stephen is a rich hill man, and and that's enough for me. So I'd love just for Stephen to introduce himself, if that's okay, Stephen.
Yeah, hi everyone. As Neil says, I'm Stephen Blevins, and I am a resident in Rich Hill. I have been living here in Rich Hill from about 1993, so I've been here quite a while now.
Good. Steve, do you want to tell us a wee bit about what family life, things that you're passionate about? I'm a Leeds United fan, so I know you're a passionate Man U fan. So maybe we could stay clear a wee bit from the football passions. But anything else that you're passionate about, let us know a wee bit more. Let us get under the bonnet a wee bit more, if that's okay.
No problem. Well, I suppose let's start a wee bit maybe with myself and family. I'm married to Joanne, who is Rich Hill born and bred as well. She was Joanne Brown. She's grown up here in Rich Hill all her life. As I say, we married in 1990, so we moved here in 1993. We have raised our two daughters here, both grown up now. So I'm also a proud grandfather. My oldest daughter's married to Danny, Hannah, and Rachel, by the way, are their names. And Hannah is married to Danny. They live in Portadown now, and I've got two grandkids, Zach and Avery, who are the joy of our lives, really. The absolute.
Stephen, I think you need to give people just a moment to pause, let them take in the fact that they cannot believe that you're a grandfather. So let's let people pause for a minute, get over the shock of that, and continue.
I'll take it as a compliment. Yeah, Joanne and I started our family young, and my daughter did the same thing. So I guess that's one of the reasons how I ended up being a grandfather quite young. But as I say, they're an absolute blessing in our lives. We
Yeah.
spend a lot of time with them. We look after them. My wife particularly looks after them on Tuesday afternoon. She only works part time, and so it's great that we get that time together. People will might recognize me around Rich Hill, but for my dog, I'm on the walk a lot of times with Joanne. We walk a little cockapoo around Rich Hill. We spend hours and hours on the road. And I've spent a lot of time doing that, particularly during this whole strange
Mm,
year that we've all been living in.
yeah.
People might also think they know me because I have a pretty well semi-famous twin brother, an identical twin brother at that. So if you know me or you know him, you know the other one as well. And David is the senior Irish correspondent on Sky News. So it's one of the reasons why when people come across me in the street, sometimes they think they know me. But my background, my personal background is I am a teacher by trade. Basically, I taught for many years, for 6 years actually, in Portadown in Millington Primary School. And then from there, I moved out to what was the old Moore Primary School as their vice principal. And I was only there 3 months when the principal decided to go and work for what was the Southern Educational Library Board at that time. So
Okay.
I ended up being an acting principal at 28 years old. So I wasn't just a young father, a young grandfather. I was also a very young school principal. I think I was the youngest in Northern Ireland probably at that time. So it was a very steep
Wow.
learning curve. I took over the acting principal's job in that school while the school was in its centenary year as well. So you can imagine the joy and the pressures of all of that.
My
And
goodness.
then from that, I moved into Pacombra Primary School in Portadown as principal. And then it kind of went in a bit of a circle because Moore amalgamated and a brand new school was built out there. Some people will probably know it, quite close to Moore Parish Church, on the way,
Okay.
basically on that road between Rich Hill,
Yeah.
Loughgall, out to the motorway. And I was principal there up until about 3.5 years ago. And then I made the move to what many teachers would call the dark side. And for the last 3.5 years, I have been a primary school and a preschool inspector. So people aren't just as keen to see me arrive at the school as they used to be a few years ago. But that's sort of my background in terms of my family and my work. But you asked me to talk about passion a little bit. And you mentioned
Yeah.
my football interest. I have a real passion for sport. I love
Yeah.
I love any kind of sport. I'll watch anything. I'll watch two flies climbing up a wall if I thought it was really fun. I love sport, and as I said, my family's very important to me. My job and what I do is important to me, and my church and my faith is obviously very important to me as well. And they're the key things, I suppose, I would call my passions. And you've already hinted in one of these as well, and maybe we'll come to it in a minute or two. But I do have a passion for this village and a passion for the future of this village as well. Brilliant. So hopefully that's a bit of that's me in a nutshell, I hope.
It's very good. No, thanks for that, Stephen. I just remembered, we can talk a bit about football actually if you want, because last night was pretty good. I have a good friend who's a Man United fan, and I sort of found myself feeling a bit sorry for United over the last couple of years, and then whenever they got beat, whenever they make their way back up to the top again, all these negative feelings start resurfacing again. So
you just don't know what you're going to get with United these days. We went through a wee spell of consistency, which was quite nice there for us United fans, and obviously we had a lot of celebrations on last Sunday past, beating our rivals Liverpool, but you just don't know what you're going to get. So,
my oldest boy is I thought he would have grown out of it by now, but he's now turned 12, and for his 12th birthday, he wanted the away Man United top, and purchasing a Man United top as a Leeds fan, it's a disaster.
Well, my oldest, I've actually got two older brothers as well, and a sister, and my oldest brother, Harry, he is actually the chairman, cum secretary of the Portadown Manchester United Supporters Club. So he actually looks after. He's got 4 season tickets of his own at Old Trafford. And he's over there all the time. So I'm over there reasonably often. I've had the chance to get over a lot of times, and I've had the pleasure of being in cup finals, Wembley Cup finals and stuff like that. So it's been very good. It's been a nice experience in recent years, and I have had I've been a United fan from way back. I think the first match I ever remember was 1976. I remember it because Sammy McIlroy scored a cup final that we were beaten in. Sammy McIlroy, of course, being Northern Ireland. So I went through all those years of misery before we had the joyful years under Ferguson, and then back into the doldrums.
Very good. Well, I can talk about football all night, but I see Andrew's eyes glazing over, so we better.
Well, I have a football story I can share. I have my one football story.
What?
You see, the thing that most people don't know is that back in school, like in primary, like first and second year actually, everyone loved football. Everyone talks about football. People collected stickers. You had to have some sort of passing football knowledge, and you had to have a team. So I latched on to Man United, and it was like, this was about 94, 95. So they were doing pretty well back then. But that was like the era of Eric Cantona and Giggsy, and that's it.
Showing off
that's all I can remember. That's a long time ago.
Well done.
Glory years.
You've held on to that story for a few years now, Andrew. You'll have to go and find a new story for another day. I could talk about football all night. But anyway, I suppose just before we do go back to Rich Hill, Stephen, just as you're talking about education there, and I know it's maybe too fresh. We've just had this announcement today about lockdown lasting even longer. But just from like your expertise in that sort of world, like do you have any reflections or any words of hope or encouragement or something for teachers or parents that are hopefully listening in to us tonight?
Yeah, well, hopefully what I would say would be a real encouragement to our teachers, our classroom assistants, our principals, our school leaders out there. I really feel passionately at the minute that teachers are really undervalued by this society. I see it every single day. My role at the moment has changed from being actually going into schools to inspect. Because of the situation we're in, we're not able to do that. And my job has been much more about providing guidance and support to what are called my district schools. I have a certain number of schools that I'm their district inspector. And it's been humbling to sit and listen to school leaders and listen to teachers talk about their dedication and their selflessness in terms of what they're trying to provide for our children. And it's really, really challenging and difficult sometimes to read the negativity about our schools and about our teachers online, when I know that huge effort that's going into it. Interesting thing that most people probably don't know about me is that while I was at Orchard County, I actually I'd say it open and honestly, I applied for the principal's post in the Hardy, and I was number 2. I was first reserve.
Wow.
And Elaine Anderson, who's the principal there, was appointed. And I knew Elaine really well because she taught with me in Millington. She was one of the partner teachers with me in P7 in Millington. And I have this huge belief that when you're supposed to push doors in your life, and those doors open, you go through them. If those doors don't open, they're not meant for you. And very clearly, I have a total peace that Hardy job was not a job I was supposed to be in, maybe because it was too close to home, or just maybe because I wasn't the right person for it. But I can also say for people who are listening in and around the Rich Hill community, Rich Hill is blessed, absolutely blessed to have Elaine Anderson as a principal of that school. She is so dedicated to what she does. She took over from a great man who was there a long time as well, dedicated to the job. But she's taken it to a new level in many ways, and she has a staff who are motivated, as I say, totally dedicated to providing the best opportunities. And it is extremely challenging for them. That people forget that teachers are also parents, and they're not only trying to provide the best for the kids they're supervising during the day and providing remote learning for and trying to provide feedback for. It's massive for them. It's a huge challenge, but they're also going home and trying to be mummies and daddies and home educators themselves in the midst of it all. So it's a particular challenge for them. And I honestly, it's been really, truly humbling to engage with them and be part of their decision-making processes over the last 12 months.
Yeah, brilliant. That's brilliant, Stephen. That has been one of the things for me, especially over the last few weeks, that recognition, because I think you're engaging with the teachers more than you've ever done before.
Absolutely.
And as you say, you get to know that actually they're doing all of this work online for so many peoples, and as you say, they're going back then to do it for their own families as well. And I really value how you've honoured Elaine as well, because I was part of the school whenever Mr. Woods was principal a lot of years ago, and so I just loved this. Like I love my experience in primary school, so much so that me and my wife, we got married 14, 15 years ago, and we moved to Craigavon. And whenever our kids got up to primary school age, I started to sweet talk her into, can we go back home? I want to go back home to Rich Hill. And so for our kids being part of Hardy, Caleb's left, and we have another 2 that are still there, and we're hoping that our youngest will get into nursery now in September. So all of what you've said there, I just want to echo all of that. So thank you.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure actually of bumping into Mr. Woods and his wife a number of times. They're big Ulster rugby fans, as am I, and I had the pleasure of bumping into them on a number of occasions, and it's great to see them. Great to see them both healthy and both well, because his wife had some health issues a while back. So no, my own children went to the Hardy as well, even though I was teaching different schools at the time. We left them here in the Hardy because we knew how good that reputation was and has been for a long time.
Mm-hmm. And then if you're willing, Stephen, just while we're still sort of reflecting a wee bit on what things have been like over the last year, as much as you're willing to say, what have been the highs and the lows that you've experienced yourself in your job or as family or just whatever you want to say to that?
Yeah, I guess like most other people, there's an awful lot of lows at the minute, and one of the biggest challenges we all have is to try and keep that motivation and stay positive in what we do. Like everyone else, really missing seeing family regularly. My wife's an occupational therapist, Neil, who works in the community in and around Armagh. And so at the minute, she is in and out of homes literally on a daily basis where she knows the occupants have COVID. She had a bit of a scare herself last weekend, even though she's had her first vaccine now. Girl she was working with and traveling actually with last week tested positive. So we both had to be tested last week again. So because of her job, I haven't actually seen my own mum and my sister in the flesh for 3 weeks now. I'm just trying to protect them. I just feel they're too vulnerable. Same for Joanne's parents. We're not seeing them anywhere near the way we'd like to see them because we just need to protect them. So we're missing friends and family desperately, like everybody else is. We generally, because we look after our grandchildren, we do see them because we're kind of in that bubble with them. We're allowed to do that, which is great to be able to continue to see them. Really missing people from church a lot. I'm one of the fortunate ones. I'm part of our tech team in Rich Hill Methodist. So Nick McKnight, who's our minister up there, is recording the service and doing live services on a Sunday morning. And so every number of weeks, I'm actually as part of that, which is great. Funny, Joanne said to me last week, "Are you not tired going up to doing that?" And I says, what if I was tired about it? I'm getting out of the house. It's a joy. It's great to get out of the house. So it's even nice. It's funny, actually. It's even nice just to go into the building, just to be in the building and just to feel that peace of being in church. It's a strange thing, but I actually really enjoy that. I enjoy that role.
I can relate to that.
Sorry, say that again.
I can relate to that.
Exactly. I just really enjoy it. I really do. But like everybody else, we're missing the cinema and sports, restaurants, all those sort of things. Yeah. But we have had some highs in the middle of it, without a shadow of a doubt. I turned 50 in the midst of lockdown in December. Now, I obviously wasn't able to celebrate it the way I usually would celebrate a 50th birthday, but it was great to have. It did give me the chance to have some quality time with the family. And I think probably the biggest high for us as a family, it's probably been just the fact that this whole thing has forced us to take stock and just to stop and just to learn to breathe again and just to learn to really appreciate and value what we have around us. I've never appreciated it more before. Joanne and I, for a very short space of time, lived in town. And it was really strange. How far to Portadown away? Like 5 miles. And Joanne used to come in from working, and she was working in Armagh, and she used to come in at night and go, you know what, I'm homesick. And it was the way we used to laugh at each other. And we lived a really short time in town and we made a decision. We actually said one day, I've always been, I suppose in the last 10 years, I've really started to reflect on what's important and ensure good quality mental and emotional health. And, I said to Joanne one day, that for me, there's 3 things that really stand out. Either you want to see the sea as often as you can, see the ocean, or else you want to see blue skies as often as you can, or green fields. And I said, you know what, you see, we go back home, and we use that term to Rich Hill. And at least you're going to see those fields whenever you want to see them. You're going to see the blue skies at least some days as well. And we thought there's 2 or 3 on a regular basis is probably the right thing to do. And never has that been more true than during this lockdown period, where we've walked miles and miles. And for the first time, actually, I trained at the University of Ulster in PE. I've spent a lot of time in the mountains. And it's funny, haven't been there for years, haven't spent time in the mountains. And because Joanne and I love spending time in New York, actually, Hannah, our oldest daughter, was married out there. It's a special place for us as a family. Spent a lot of holidays out there. And we had our holiday booked there last year, and we didn't get like so many other people. But we were at the last minute able to get a place booked in the Lake District. And it really introduced Joanne to the benefits of getting up into the hills and up into the mountains and around the Lake District. And we ended up coming home and spending a lot more time in and around the moors. So for me, that has been a huge benefit. It just reminded us of how special it is and how good it is for us to get up and do that. So probably, I would say those are the main highs and lows for me personally during this period.
Brilliant. Is there anything just when you're talking about the lows there? Is there anything that you've particularly found helpful in those moments? Any sort of rhythms or patterns that you've found that have just been helpful, sort of with your well-being? Mental health.
You've just used words that I was about to use. Rhythm and pattern are absolutely essential for me. Even though I'm working from home in a home office at the minute, and I have been for I think I've been in 6 schools in a 12-month period. Usually we're in schools every day. So I spent so much time with so many other people, 7, 8, 9 hours a day screen time, which is challenging as anybody does that would know. What I've tried to do, if Joanne's getting up at 7 o'clock to go to work, I don't lie on my bed to 7:30 and jump on the office. I've tried to maintain the same patterns. I've tried to get up at usual times. And instead of having to spend that time driving to a school, which could be anywhere in the country, I'm out walking the dog or taking a run and trying to create that structure and trying to create those patterns. And as I said a minute or 2 ago, trying to really, really just embrace what's around us. I've also found a little app, which I'm sure you're aware of. I've used it a lot during the whole period of lockdown. Nick recommended it to us. I'm trying to think of the actual title of it. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's the one
Is it the Lectio?
Lectio
365.
Lectio 365.
Oh, yeah.
I've used that a lot out walking. Just taking that time when you're in the fresh air and you're looking around you, and just it helps you really focus on what they're talking about, I find. So Nick introduced it to us, and I've continued to use that quite a bit. And I found at times when I've been a little bit more stressed, or COVID news hasn't been good at night in the news, and just start to feel that little bit of tension in your body, I find that relaxes me. And just it reminds me what, we're not in control of all of this. There's a much greater action in play, so.
Yeah, and it does seem so simple, but I relate to what you're saying. Even the very opening part of that Lectio every morning is to breathe deeply.
Yeah.
And as weird as that sounds, that has been one of the things that I've had, like, I would never even have thought of that. I'd never have even contemplated breathing deeply in order to sort of settle myself or in order to refocus. But I just found that that's what I have to do, this idea, and I think you've sort of alluded to it, this idea of stopping and paying attention. And so whether that's with family or whether that's as you're out in a walk around your village, this idea of stopping and paying attention. And so I suppose it's why we wanted to have some conversations as well, Stephen, because I think that's really important as we think about what we want to see happening in this community. We want to be able to be able to stop and to pay attention and to listen to what's going on in the lives of the people that we all share this space with.
You're aware, Neil, that I get on my Twitter soapbox every now and again, and I try to do it as humbly as possible, which is hard on Twitter sometimes when people are saying things which you fundamentally totally disagree with. But you've probably seen this actually recently, and some other people may be aware of this as well. But talking about that whole importance of embracing nature and the environment around us. Just before Christmas, I was on Amazon one day flicking through things, and I spotted this little wildlife camera, an infrared wildlife camera. And I said to Joanne, that's what I want for Christmas. And I actually sent a photograph of it I sent the link to one of David's cameramen, a guy called Graham McNeil. Some people may know from Portadown. And sent it to Graham and said, what's this? Is this any good? It's only 40 quid, but it looks good. And he sent it on to actually a guy who does wildlife photography. And he came back and he said, listen, you could spend £40 that, or you could spend £400 in one. And that one will do exactly the same thing, other than it won't go directly to your phone or your laptop. You'll have to take a card out and take it back and take a look at it. And I said to Joanne, right, let's get this, because my grandson Zach gives me so much pleasure, but he is just a wee mini David Attenborough. He's just a wealth of information. He tells me stuff. He teaches me stuff all the time, and he just loves all that outdoor stuff. And I said to Joanne, this is a great wee thing for me to be able to do with him. A little special thing, which is just ours. It's not my camera, it's our camera. And we've had it's been unbelievable. Honestly, I've only used it properly twice, and I have been like a child using it. And it has been so rewarding. We've gone down, if anybody knows Rich Hill, there's a little woodland area between Maynooth Hill and Brentwood, basically. There's like a valley in there, and there's a bag of Pinewood back onto it even as well. Yes. There's little woodlands in there, right? It's privately owned. So I went up and had a chat with the farmer and said, listen, I've got this camera. You'd be okay with me going in? And he gave me because I went nasty, I had no problems with that. Yeah. I put it down one night just after Christmas. Really easy to set up. And went back the next morning with Zach. We lifted it straight away, and we were able to check. There's a little screen on it, and you open it up. And we saw straight away we had recorded 192 images. And the excitement on his face, what? And I was thinking, man. There was also a coincidence because it was the first night it snowed, and I thought, I bet you get that 192 photographs of snow falling, and that's what triggered the camera. We brought it home, and we were just overjoyed to find absolutely brilliant images and videos of this wee fox. We left some dog food in and around it, and this little fox 2 or 3 times during the night had come along, same wee fox, brilliant images. And then last week I did the same thing again, pure coincidence again. It was the night the snow fell heavily, and I got a cracking photograph in the daylight this time of a fox going past the camera. You know, and it's such a simple thing, but so rewarding, and such a brilliant way to actually embrace something. We had gone for loads of walks, Zach and I, across the field, and he kept it. We actually found a fox skull one day, and we saw sheep bones, but never actually could find something living to talk about. So his excitement when we had it was fantastic. So rewarding, so rewarding.
You'll have everybody heading up to the farmer during the week to see if they can set up their cameras. But it's not but just you talking about Zach. My wee youngest, or she's not my youngest daughter. That's awful. She's my second youngest daughter. She's like a wee eco warrior. So it's like she said to me again today, Daddy, we have not went out and picked the rubbish up around the village in like 2 or 3 weeks. When are we doing it? You know, and I love that. That's like I want to be the one to be pushing her and like, but she's the one saying to me, Daddy, like, we need to get back. Why do people keep doing it? And for some reason, she has it.
That's where our skills are undervalued. That's where they're undervalued. They are doing, and they are pushing that message out in such a positive way that our children are actually engaged and motivated and excited about it. That's special for me.
Yeah. For some reason, she has it in for teenagers. She keeps asking me, Daddy, why do the teenagers keep dropping all their stuff? So if any teenagers are listening, sorry about that.
It's amazing how one word from a teacher and it has given an explanation there, probably like a teenager thrown out of the car, and that she's hung in that one word. Isn't it
She
amazing how that
has.
can happen?
That would be like her, yeah. So like I love all of that, Stephen, and so you've touched on stuff that I think one of the things for me over this lockdown period is you've mentioned at the start you are passionate about this place, and we'll go back to that in a wee moment, but that's been probably the highlight for me over lockdown. It just increased my appreciation for this place and the people who
Yeah,
make up this place, you know.
yeah,
And so I was reading the book recently, and it talked about the subtitle of the chapter was The New Commons. And so it literally was just talking about no matter who we are, no matter what our background or what we've done or where we come from, that there's things that we all hold in common as we share this space together. And I think we've almost automatically touched on them all. The four things that they talked about was the environment, education, um, economy, and civic. So like the government and within leadership, and those are the four things that we share together. And I was just reading a couple of months back. I was reading this quote from JFK that said, "Our most basic common link is that we all inhabit this small planet, and we all breathe the same air, and we all cherish our children's future." And so there's just stuff like that just like whenever I read that just stirs me again. And I know he's talking about bigger, talking about the small planet, but I've come to realize that within the few square miles of this place, like we all share this. We're all sharing this moment together, whether it's economy, environmental, education, or civic. And so I've just found that really really helpful as I've considered my own community engagement and my community response.
yeah. The people, some of the people who are so committed to the village. You know, I did a little message through the Methodist Church just before Christmas about hope. And I talked particularly about my sister who's got severe disabilities, and I thanked Ruth Briggs on it, who does so much work alongside Alan, who you had on recently talking, and a number of other people around the village who work so hard in that committee to make sure, you know, that was one of the things that struck me during lockdown as well. Every time we walked into the village, there's new flowers, new planting. Even the local British Legion deserve a huge amount of credit for the way they look after the cenotaph down at the bottom of the town, and just the way they honour those people who are remembered there. That's all part of what is Rich Hill to me, and it's so important that all of that is valued. And that's why I get such a kick out of you talking about your daughter there, actually talking about her, you know, her wanting to lift that rubbish. It's one of the things I could easily get on the soapbox. Actually, I did that on Twitter not long ago. I posted a picture. Actually, I was out walking my dog one day and I saw this Starbucks cup line with a name on it. I'll not name the name, but there's a name on it. I took a picture and I said, next time we drive through the village, quoted the name. Think about taking your rubbish home with you. You know, and so your daughter and I get on very well, I think.
Yeah, very good. I suppose as we've talked, we've sort of mentioned, sort of both of us have mentioned our mutual affection for this place. Is there, I suppose, just as we begin to wrap this up, like, is there any sort of hopes and dreams or goals or ambitions that you have for this place?
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, I've got hopes and dreams for Rich Hill. You know, it's, I suppose, probably ultimately my hope or my dream for this village would be that everybody who lives in this village or is part of this Rich Hill community, and you know, regardless of your nationality, your culture, your religion, whatever that may be, just that they have the ability to live in respect and the value and to care for each other and to love each other for who we are as a village. And you know, it's something I'm really passionate about. I mentioned earlier that I go to Rich Hill Methodist, and we've been really blessed in that church for a long period of time. In the fact we had John Alderdice, we had Paul Ritchie, and now we have Nick McKnight. Three absolute warriors who are, you know, they've really renewed, those three guys in a row they've left us in a place where we're not anywhere near the traditional Methodist church anymore. They've totally renewed our focus. And perhaps in some cases, maybe even introduce us to the concept that a faith is all about our relationship with God and all about grace and all about love, and absolutely nothing to do with finger pointing and hatred and the anger that is just so stereotypical for what is Northern Ireland religion. You know, I absolutely hate the term, if anybody said to me, oh, he's religious. I absolutely hate that, because I'm anything but religious. I have my faith is everything to me. But religion is nothing to me, I really, I suppose that's a bit of a passion of mine. It's I love the idea of actually really challenging that stereotypical view of what's accepted as our Northern Ireland priorities. In many ways, I suppose, are your cultural heritage, then your religion, then God. That's the order they're kind of put in, and it should be completely the other way around. And it's accepted. It's widely accepted in so many circumstances. Nick talked about it actually on Sunday in many ways. I think I told you before, actually, Neil, in speaking to you, probably one of the most important verses for me in the Bible is in our chapter. Sorry, is in Matthew 22, when the Sadducees asked Jesus about the greatest commandment. And he replied in verse 37 saying, love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. That's the first and greatest commandment. And then he said in the second is to love your neighbor as yourself. And it amazes me how many people just absolutely ignore that commandment, as Jesus quoted it, to be the second most important commandment we have got. And we put it so far down the list of priorities. And if we could get that as a much higher priorities, I think we could get a village into a place where it's a much more, even more welcoming place, an accepting place of who we are. And I was going to say to you, Nick touched on it also on Sunday when he preached from Matthew chapter 5. And he talked about the deliberate misinterpretation of biblical laws by the Sadducees again earlier in the book. For their personal gain, and honestly, that really frustrates me when I see that in our lives today. I think what Nick talked about was Jesus saying that he was teaching in these verses that murder is not just something to do with your hands; it's also something to do with your heart. And he really emphasized the fact that the sharpness of our words were as deadly as the sharpness of our blades. And to me, that's where faith needs to go to in this country, and that's where this community needs to go to as well, to a place where we're at peace with each other and we're at peace with ourselves, and all the hatred's gone. We see it every day in our news. We see it today even from our MPs or MLAs. We hear those comments which are just full of anger. And it's something, even though I am passionate sometimes about what I write on Twitter, I like to think that I'm trying my best to be passionate in a respectful way, which also values somebody else's opinion. And Twitter's maybe a really interesting place to try and do that, because as everybody knows, it can be hateful at times as well. And it's when I see people talking about Christianity or talking about religion that they do tend to in this country rather than about Christianity, it really frustrates me when I don't see what I call the most important things, the fruits of the Spirit. When you don't see that kindness, you don't see that goodness and the faithfulness. And that, I suppose, I don't get it right. Absolutely, I get it wrong all the time. But it's it's the lens that I'm trying to look at my own life through more and more, and being harder and harder on myself as I watch my daily walk and through life, not just as a Christian walk, but in trying to ensure that the model I'm given, or the example I'm given, is of those things, is of that kindness. It's something that really stood out to me. I mentioned it before on Twitter again last week about when it comes to people, or it comes to world leaders, or it comes even to school principals, I am much more drawn to the person with that grace, that person with that gentle voice, rather than that person who's out there ranting and raving. It's just who I am, and I think it's because I see that in them, and I trust that's what I see in them.
Oh man, that is so good. I could listen to you go on about that for so much longer. I think it's, honestly, Stephen, I think it's really, really important. It's really powerful, and it just so happened to be that me and Nick, although we engage quite often, I am a huge fan of Nick. Really grateful for his friendship and his commitment to this village. And but we've both been going through Matthew 5, I believe.
Yeah.
You must be going on further. We just did the Beatitudes, but for me that was remarkable. For me, it was, I was communicating it to our church, but for me it was one of those moments where it was like this is what it's all about. I just want to grab hold and take of all the other stuff that's going on. This is truly the way of Jesus.
Yeah.
And even more recently, I think one of the things we need more than anything at the moment is patience with each other, patience with those that we rub shoulders with, patience with ourselves. And I think it's no coincidence that Paul used that as his first characteristic of love in 1 Corinthians 14, that love is patient.
Yeah.
And those few verses before that, Stephen, as I'm listening to you again, that's maybe it's a fear of mine sometimes, actually, that in how we communicate Christianity, or how we communicate the way of Jesus, that if it's not with love, we're just a noisy gong, we're a clanging cymbal. And the thought of giving my life, and at the end of it, I've just been making a load of racket and a load of noise.
Yeah.
I can't bear the thought of that. And so, like you, I'm just asking, like, how do we love our neighbour really, really well?
Yeah. Earlier today, I saw a teacher, a principal, talk about the value of a Syrian boy who had come into his school not that long ago, and ended up over a very short space of time, for not being able to speak English. This was a post-primary school. This boy became the head boy in the school. And the principal was talking about the experience and what that was like for him. And I am so blessed to have had this very similar opportunities, particularly working in Bacombra in Portadown, because it's very close to a hospital. So we had a lot of Indian families, Filipino nurses families, Chinese doctors families. And, you know, we also had some Eastern Europeans as well. And I tell people this story all the time. I had a little girl who was brought up to our front door on the first day of September, and she was standing in the Killigamane Junior High School uniform. The vice principal had brought her up. She had gone to Killigamane. She had got a place in that school, and what they hadn't realised was she'd given slightly the wrong date of birth. She was a year too early. So they brought her up on the first day. She couldn't speak one word of English, and this was the 1st of September. See, in December that same year, she was translating in my office for another Russian family being shown around school. And I tell you, talk about humbling. And you see their work ethic. They are such an example. And that gives me, I suppose, something we did actually in church a long time ago now. It must be 15 years ago. We did those, what's it called again? ESOL, English as a second language.
Oh, yes.
Those classes, we ran those for a while. And I volunteered because I was a teacher. And it was such a really rewarding opportunity to actually get to be able to dig deeper and get to meet people and understand people. Yeah. And it turned out I was playing football at that time, and I introduced one of the guys to Loughgall Football Club. He ended up playing first team football at Loughgall. He ended up coming to. He was a trained PE teacher, and he was working on the factory line here. We brought him to our house, and we had meals with them. Paul and Caroline Ritchie, who were with us at the time, we had nights together with him in our homes. And he said to us that one night, you know, Sophie and I'd really love to bring you guys back, but we're not allowed to have visitors in our homes. And we said, well, tell you what, that's not a problem. You cook for us in our homes next week, you know. And Sophie, his partner at the time, they're now married. She and they're now back home living in Poland. But she ended up playing the piano in our church on Christmas Eve one year, and there was hardly dry eye in the house as people pictured the world that they'd come from and the journey they'd come on and the challenges they were facing. She was a trained paramedic. He was a trained PE teacher. The two of them working on the factory line here to try and make ends meet. But it was. Yeah. It changes you. Those experiences change you and introduce you to something. And I think that's something we all need, and particularly this country. We need to widen those horizons. We need to get those opportunities and meet those people and be open to what we can learn from them. Yeah,
I love that you've used that story, Stephen, because that idea of you having them around your table for dinner, it's in many ways, for people listening, it probably seems like the most simple task, but I think just to follow on some of the language you're using, some of the language I find myself using is, how do we extend our tables? And I know this is a difficult conversation at the minute because we're not allowed anybody into our homes. Yeah. But as we move on from here, I think that is most important. How do we extend our tables? Because I look at the Gospel of Luke, and the Gospel of Luke, Jesus is either going to a meal, he's coming from a meal, or he's sitting down at a meal. And so I think it truly is the way of Jesus whenever we extend our table. And that's where those relationships and loving our neighbour really well happens, isn't it?
Absolutely. As you well know, everybody has got their own personal opinions on whether they're a Trump fan or whether they're a Joe Biden fan, and everybody's very passionate about those views. I'm not going to go into that, but that actually was my favourite quote from last week during that inauguration or after, when Joe Biden actually said, and I'm not saying that Joe Biden's the answer to all our problems in this world, because they've both got their strengths and their weaknesses. Let's put it like that. But you know what he did you hear that quote where he said, we don't need longer walls, we don't need bigger walls, we need bigger tables?
Oh, did I?
That, yeah. And that's so it ties in perfectly what you're saying there.
Brilliant.
Stephen, I was looking through your Twitter Sorry, just to kind of get to know you a wee bit before I met you. But I kind of get the impression that there's from between kind of the sports stuff, but there's the reactions and stuff you're having with people online, and there are kind of old, I guess, probably old thoughts and old ways of thinking that are still kind of about, and you're challenging those. And I suppose my question is, I know for me that I have a bit of a fear of coming out of this lockdown and going back to the way things were. I'm excited to see how things are going to change, and I get the impression of you're itching for something different the other side of the lockdown, whether it's in the education or you're even talking about getting outside and getting into nature and stuff a bit more. And what are your kind of dreams? What would you like to see change?
You're probably right, Paul. I suppose I've always been the type of person to wear my heart on my sleeve. I describe myself as that, and even though even though it's difficult to do that, probably particularly in the country we live in, you have to be very careful sometimes about your viewpoints, and particularly in pushing boundaries or changing things which have been the traditional norms for so long. But you're absolutely right. I do feel that is a passion of mine to a certain extent, but it's something that's a really challenging thing to do. It's really I find it particularly challenging to do it in a way that also still continues to show that patience and that love to people, instead of coming across as being indignant and being, listen, I know better than you. I think one of our biggest faults in this country is I think we don't have enough confidence in ourselves at times. And I think people tend to, if somebody has a difference of opinion in this country, we think, he thinks I'm an idiot. He thinks I'm not as educated as him. He thinks because he went to university, he knows better than me. I think it's a real problem with our country, and we need to get past that as people. We need to realize that a difference of opinion does not mean that somebody thinks any less of you. It just thinks, I'm a great believer in any one of us could have been born anywhere in the world. It really frustrates me when people talk negatively about asylum seekers or about people on boats trying to cross an ocean. That really frustrates me, because I say to them all the time, it's only by the grace of God that we were born here and we live here and we have that choice. Any one of us could be on that boat. And I keep saying to people all the time, do you really believe that people are on that boat by choice, or are they on that boat because they have no other choice? They're risking their families' lives to be there. And I suppose I try to have some of those conversations. It's difficult. It's difficult on Twitter because people just want to have a go straight at you, and particularly faceless people. David gets a lot of abuse, my brother, on Twitter because of the nature of his job, and he has to be so neutral in the way he reports. And people sometimes don't understand that. And the challenges come from people who are faceless. I love having a good, open debate and respectful debate with people, but it's a challenging thing here. But it's not going to stop me trying to do it, Paul. It's something I'm going to continue to try to do in the hope that I've got real confidence in the next generation. People talk negatively about the younger generation, something, but see an example Neil used tonight about his daughter. I hear that all the time. I see that all the time in our primary schools. And I hear from my own daughters. My own daughters correct me, and rightly so at times. I can say something which I think is okay to say, and they'll say that's not okay to say. That's actually, that still comes across as homophobic, or that still comes across as racist in some way, and you're not even aware you don't mean it in any way like that. Obviously, it's not a deliberate thing, but you could be saying something which just they're saying that's really open for debate. That the way you're saying it, and they're teaching me sometimes. And the way they're teaching me, they're teaching me respectfully. But I suppose that's where the confidence comes from. I have to get better at saying, you know what, you're absolutely right. I think I am getting better at them. I tell you differently, but I hope I'm getting better at it. But I think we as a community and we as a country just really need to get so much better at listening to others, having a much more open mind. And thinking, you know what, maybe there is a different way of doing this. There's a different way of thinking about that, not just necessarily the same way that I've been taught to think from the day and hour I was brought into a home. And unfortunately, that's the biggest challenge we have to overcome. People think it's because that's what I've been told from my mother, my father, my brother. Some people probably think I'm an absolute idiot on Twitter, and fair play to them. They're totally entitled to that right. But I just feel it's important that someone's not afraid. And it's the same. I do it a bit in my job. I have to be careful in doing it in my job because officially I am a civil servant and I officially do work under the umbrella of the Department of Education. So even though I might at times have a difference of opinion from the Minister of Education or from the department, I can't publicly put that out on the likes of Twitter. But you do have a voice still in terms of my job as well, because I think quite a few people who follow me knew I was a principal for many years, and then now know I moved into a different role within education. And I think for that reason they are still interested in listening to me. And I'd like to think, I have a balanced view when it comes to education. I do respect those efforts that teachers are putting in, and that's one of the biggest challenges that our education workforce has at the minute. They just feel undervalued, and they think everybody thinks there's so many negative comments about, oh, look at those holidays they get. What are they complaining about now? That's just a regular comment you see all the time. And I think they do appreciate when I actually come up front and say, these people are doing a good job under really difficult circumstances, and they need support to do that job,
Well, I hope anybody that's listening to this, Stephen, that thinks you're an idiot on Twitter, I hope they've heard your heart at least, and that's the most important thing. Is I think you're right. Sometimes we can shy away from saying too much because I'm always afraid my tone is going to be misunderstood.
Absolutely.
But I appreciate this conversation, because some things could be, you could put a certain tone or a certain twist to what somebody communicates, but I think it's a huge difference when somebody knows your heart.
Yeah.
And
I think it's a confidence that causes that, Nate. Exactly like I've just been talking about. I think people read something completely differently the way it's meant sometimes because of their own lack of confidence. They think it's an attack on them, but it's not. Quite often you're actually semi-agreeing with that person,
Yeah.
But you're right, absolutely agree with you.
Yeah, well, honestly, we could go on for a long time about this, because I think you're right. I think it's some of the stuff that we hold on to, not because we even believe it. It's almost out of fear. It's almost out of fear of some of the things that we've held on to for so long, that actually we can be a bit uncertain about it, and it's almost fear that causes us to lash out sometimes at people.
Yeah.
But that's a bigger conversation maybe for part two. But I think for the sake of your time, Stephen, I know we've went on, but I really want to honour your time and thank you so much for giving of it tonight. I'd love just to ask, finish off with this, just if there's something that you have been watching, or something that you've been listening to, something that you've been reading that you could recommend to us. We're back in lockdown for another few weeks, so anything you're watching, listening, or reading that you could recommend to us in closing.
Well, like everyone else, John and I have been very dependent at times on Netflix, like everybody else has.
Yeah.
But I suppose the thing something I didn't mention earlier, which is also I've had a chance to do a little bit more of during lockdown, is actually read. I was not a big reader for many years, and I've started to read more as I've got older. Big fan of historical fiction. I love, books like The Tattooist of Auschwitz or All the Light We Cannot See. And I love all Victoria Hislop style books where there's a historical thread going through a really good fictional story. I love all that. But probably my most enjoyable read during this whole period, I would recommend it to people, is a book called A Man Called Ove, Scandinavian writer, a guy called Frederick Backman. Basically, it's about this really grumpy old man, real solitary figure, lives alone, and suddenly he's like supposed to basically describe it as like most men when they hit about middle age, going towards 50, going on 60. They're starting to get grumpier and grumpier all the time, and everybody's complaining about that. But Ove's whole world is just turned upside down when this really young family moves in next door. He's the kind of guy who just would point the finger at people in public. They're just people he dislikes, and when you first read it, you're going, this, you're laughing a bit at him. It's well written because you laugh because you see yourself, if truth be told. Any middle-aged man sees himself, But he's got real staunch principles, real strict routines, all those things, and a real short fuse too. But ultimately, people think he's a really bitter neighbour, but it turns out probably that in many ways, when this young family moves in, it leads to a really comical, heartwarming story, and a really unexpected friendship. And that really, really challenges the reader and challenged me about all those preconceptions we've been talking about all night about people in our community and about the people we see all around us. And I suppose in many ways perfectly underlines the importance of that demand on us to be patient and gentle and kind. Yeah. And I suppose that book just encapsulates all that for me.
Very good. You sold it. Amen. Brilliant, Stephen. Andrew, Paul, anything from you guys?
Yeah, it definitely sounds like there's going to be a to be continued with this, Stephen. So thanks.
Yeah, no problem. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Thanks for having me, guys. Really enjoyed having a good chat with you.
Thanks for
Good
being on.
man.
If you've got any good wildlife photos, I'd love to see them.
Yeah,
See
well,
something.
follow me on Twitter there, and that's where I post them because it's amazing the response I've got from those. People have really enjoyed it. People, I think,
Yeah, great.
People have I think they've seen the way it's turned me back into a wee boy and the excitement there. So I'll definitely keep posting them there.
Good man. Thanks.
We'll have to get a few of those to go along with the podcast.
Yeah, certainly. You can probably pick them up, or if you want, I'll ping them to you if it's easier, if it's better.
Super.
Right.
Yeah, honestly, Stephen, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it. There's 3 or 4 things I feel like I just keep. I've restrained myself from just like pushing it even further. But thank you so much, and
Thanks for having me.
appreciate your passion and your commitment to this village and all of those other things that you're involved in. And yeah, again, thank you so much, Stephen. We'll chat again soon.
Thank you.
Ordinary People was hosted by Neil Dawson, and it was produced, edited, and engineered by Andrew Gribben and Paul Woods. Head over to ordinarypodcast.com for show notes, links, previous episodes, and all the ways you can contact the show. See you next time.